Today, we're going to be going through some strange and odd facts from Rainbow Six Siege you've probably forgotten. Now if you do learn something new and enjoy this video, like, subscribe, go follow my Twitch, Twitter and TikTok, all in the description of this video. Without wasting any more time, let's jump into it. And to start off, the first thing I want to talk about is Tuberel was originally from DBD, or if you don't know, Dead by Daylight. Now if you don't know what Dead by Daylight is, it's like a killer versus survivor game where like you have one killer from a random franchise chasing around 4 survivors, and like it could be like any franchise in the world. Like they've got, you know, FNAF has recently came into it. They've got some anime characters in there, some Resident Evil as well, all sorts of characters in the game. But on the release of Operation Deep Freeze, where Tuberel came out, Tuberel, along with Blitz and Womai, got added as skins to the game for survivors to pick. Now what's interesting about Deep Freeze is that Deep Freeze got delayed by 2 or 3 days, which then meant that Tuberel has been in Dead by Daylight longer than Rainbow Six Siege, which is funny to think about. So technically we've got 2 crossover characters you can play in the game. Zero from Splinter Cell and Tuberel from Dead by Daylight. But moving on, what I want to talk about next is Gridlock and Capital's LMGs. Now, as you know now, when you go to pick a DMR, they have telescopic scopes, which is A or B, and one of them is the old 2X, and one of them is the 3X. However, the 3X is actually an improved design of the old ACOG that Capital and Gridlock's LMG used to have. It's one of these like just weird things that were just in the game for some reason. They just didn't have the normal ACOG. Personally, I thought they were really clean, and it was pretty neat to see. In the grand scheme of things, it didn't really make much sense. Like, why is it that only these 2 guns have a different ACOG? Hopefully they bring them back though, because they were pretty clean. The next thing I want to cover is the country with the most operators in the game, and this is actually America. Now America actually has 10 operators from their country. Now, if you didn't know who this was, of course you've got the original FBI, being Thermite, Ash, Castle and Pulse. But then, on top of this, we also have both Valkyrie and Blackbeard, Maverick, Deimos, Zero, and Warden, who actually used to be the president's right-hand man security. So, pretty neat to know. Next, 28 crossover skins in the game. This is probably off, but I counted 28. Of course, you've got characters from like the boys with, you know, having Black Noir, Homelander. You've got Dead by Daylight with Huntress, Trapper. You've got elite skins from Resident Evil, like for Lion and Sophia. And then on top of this as well, you've got so many more. Like for example, Zero and Flores with his Assassin's Creed elite skin. But it's incredible to think how many different franchises are actually in this game, because you don't realise how many there are until you pay attention to it. Next up, to everyone from the UK, you've actually got 2 football clubs in the game, or for any weirdos from America, you've got soccer. Now, these 2 football clubs are from Esports, and the 2 football teams that are inside of the Esports, inside of Rainbow Six Siege, is of course Wolves, who field a team that consists of Nudo, Oscar, Tyrant, Leader, and Azar, who are all pretty strong players. And the second football team to have a team inside of Rainbow Six Siege is PSG Talon, who partnered with the Esports org Talon to fund this roster. PSG's roster consists of GLT, Misa, Ryder, Royboy, Soldier, and Seora, who are all pretty strong players. Next up, let's talk about money. And did you know the most expensive skin on the marketplace is the T5 Horn Wandering for 1 million credits and has never been sold? Now, the reason why this is so expensive is because it was a part of the board game that Ubisoft tried to put out around like 2022. And what this would do is you could put down a certain amount of money, and however much money you put down would actually contribute you getting some skins from the board games. Now, if I'm not mistaken, Legion was actually the most expensive, with them having a headgear, a uniform, and this T5 skin all coming in at the top tier, and this is the reason why it's so expensive. Now it's interesting this has never been sold, because it's a pretty sick SMG skin with the T5. However, again, it's nothing flashy, but it's nice to look at. Personally, I think someone will sell it. I mean, 1 million credits, you would never have to spend a penny on the game ever again. I would do it. Next thing I want to talk about, 13 ACOGs on defense. It's interesting to talk about this because there's rumors at the end of this year they're going to remove ACOGs from defense. But the sad part is there's only about 13 operators with an ACOG. So why would they care? So why would they make such an influential change? If you don't know who those operators are, Castle, Dot, Rook, Tachanka, Frost, Vigil, Maestro, Izami, Alibi, Arune, Goyo, Cade, and finally Tuberel. So let me know, do you think these 13 operators deserve to lose their ACOG on defense at the end of this year? Personally, I don't think so. But we'll see how it pans out. Now next, we're taking another trip down memory lane, and I want to talk about the SMG11. Now did you know this used to have ACOG as well? So it used to be Bandit and Jaeger with an ACOG that everyone raves on about and wants back in the game. But the SMG11 did also have an ACOG as well. I'm glad they removed it, but I would like to see a little bit of balance go towards quick match, where we could maybe see an event or like just a limited time where the SMG11 is back with an ACOG. Definitely broken, 100%. Like there's no beating around the bush. This is the most broken secondary in the game if I had an ACOG. But on the topic of SMG-11, please give Sledge his SMG-11 back. Again, staying in the past, used to be able to look through bullet holes when you shoot them. This created the most god-awful defender-sided meta I've ever seen in my life. No utility was ever needed. All you need to do was shoot a bullet hole in a wall, and that was it. Unfightable angle. I vividly remember playing Maestro ACOG on Villa inside of Astro, where I was prone behind the Astro table and just shot bullet holes looking towards the bathroom door, and whenever any attacker swung me, even with my horrible aim on console, I would kill them every time, because they couldn't fight back. They didn't know where I was. Well, they knew where I was, but they couldn't see my head. And speaking of Maestro, that hipfire, when he was released, was broken. For some reason, it didn't spread. So you could hipfire this thing, and then zoom in, and have a sniper rifle. So, like, Maestro was just the best operator in the game, and that LMG was the best gun in the game. Because if anyone got close to you, you hipfire, and you spray their shit down. You ADS, you snipe them. You can't fight Maestro. If you had a competent Maestro who knew how to shoot his gun, you were fine. But coming to more recent time, we're going to talk about invisible gadgets. Now nowadays, they've all been phased out. You don't get invisible gadgets at all, which is interesting. Personally, I'm glad they're gone, but I do believe that it did nerf IQ in a sense, because IQ was the biggest counter to Legion and Echo, whose gadgets used to go invisible. Now when I say invisible, they weren't completely invisible. Of course, they were still like transparent, but they were pretty hard to see, and let's not beat around the bush here. When you're playing a game of Rainbow Six Siege, the last thing you're going to be looking for, or you want to be looking for, is a faint outline of an Echo drone or a Legion mine. So yeah, please Ubisoft, do not bring this back. Next up, one of my favourite balances of all time was when they removed the MP5 from Oryx and the T5 from Melusi, but then swapped them. So Oryx ended up with the T5 and Melusi ended up with MP5. This is the best balance we've ever seen to date in Rainbow Six Siege, in my opinion, because the guns are still in circulation, so there isn't a removal of that type of gun, especially with how rare, the T5 is, with only being on 2 operators. But what is good about it is it still nerfs Melusi and buffs Oryx, because the MP5 is worse than the T5. So if we could do this more often, I would love that. And it's a simple balance change to make. Swap around the guns. Maybe, for example, I don't know, give Aurora the G3 and then give Ayana the 417. I don't know. Maybe don't do that, but you get the point. Swapping around the guns is an interesting balancing choice, and I do really like it. The next, did you know that Operation Health actually replaced a different season that was going to be the Poland season? Now inside the Poland season, of course, we were going to have Ella and Zofia, which we already did get, and we just got them over the space of 2 different seasons, with the Ella coming out with Legion and Ying, and Zofia coming out with Dokkaebi and Vigil. However, the original plan for year 2 was actually that we would get a Poland map that was set in a distillery where they would make spirits, possibly vodka, because that's the most, that's when you think of Poland, you think of vodka, so let's be real here for a second. But this would be a pretty interesting map. I'd actually really like to see. For a little while, to the lead up of SiegeX, I actually believed the distillery map was going to come with SiegeX, with the way they teased dual front. It looked like a distillery from the outside. I hope they haven't got this idea, because it's very interesting, and I feel like it could provide for almost a warehouse aesthetic, which we don't really have properly inside of Rainbow Six Siege. Now next up, it's a sad one. They're removing the ice cream van on Cafe. If you didn't know, there's an ice cream van, or a van that looks like an ice cream van, on Cafe inside of the south spawn, which blocks any defenders spawn peeking the south spawn from delivery, and they're getting rid of this to replace it with a normal Russian police van. It's a bit strange to me, the fact that there's a police van inside of Cafe, which is in Russia, and it says police on the side of it in English. There's no Russian translation. Credit Coconut Brado for making this side-by-side comparison, because without that, I probably wouldn't have noticed. Now let's get back to some throwbacks. Valcams outside the map. Valcams outside the map was a massive thing for me. That personally made me fall in love with Rainbow Six Siege, because I loved how tactical and how thought-provoking you could get with operators like Valkyrie, who could just put their cam anywhere, and you could get so aggro off of them. It's sad now, but nowadays, when you throw a Valcam out the map, they have 10 seconds, and then they run out of signal, and that's them cooked for the entire round. You can't pick them back up, which is a shame, because it was really fun to do. Nowadays, you drive an Echo Cam outside and back in, and that's the closest thing we'll ever get to it. But please, Ubisoft, for the one time, bring back Valcams outside the map. Another interesting one to talk about is on the release of Operation Parabellum. The ACS-12 shotgun that Alibi and Maestro had was actually just a normal shotgun. It wasn't slugged like it is nowadays, and you could just tear about sites with this shotgun. It had insane destructibility, and I'm pretty sure the test server in that first week of Operation Parabellum, there was no wall in sight ever standing. Whenever I'd seen clips of it, because at the time I was on console, there was no walls to be seen. It was like Bob the Bowler came in and just slammed his hammer on every single wall in the sight. I'm glad they've reworked it into what it is nowadays with the ACOG and the slug firing rounds it has. And me personally, if it wasn't for the Boss G being so broken, I believe we would be talking about the ACS-12 every day. It would have been ACS-12 meta, not Boss G meta. A year after they added yellow pings to the game on drones, they were going to add a sound cue that would play for defenders to allow defenders to know when they're being yellow pinged, or even attackers. So this would be interesting because, I mean, it would take a lot of the skill of recognizing when you've been droned out of the game. Because what I've noticed as well from watching players like Stompin is one of the reasons why they're so good at Rainbow Six Siege is because they know by how their opponent is playing if they've been droned. Which is an interesting skill to know. I would love to learn it. But of course, I'm dumb. I'm dumb as hell. I will never learn that skill. I like that this didn't make it through to the actual game. Because, to be honest with you, it would actually remove a lot of the power out of the yellow ping. Which could be a bad thing and could be a good thing. It's one of these like up in the air. It's good for you if you're the one getting yellow pinged. It's bad for you if the one yellow pinging. I think it could work in the game, but I hope they don't bring it. The only way it would ever work though is if they made the sound effect a little bit quieter, because when it was in the test server, it was so loud. It was louder than gunfire sometimes, so you knew you were getting yellow pinged. And finally, the last thing I want to talk about is the oldest operator in Rainbow Six Siege is Zero, and this is because he is Sam Fisher, and he has had so many games in the past. If you ever want to see how many games Zero has been in, search up Splinter Cell. There's games older than me based around Sam Fisher. And finally, the youngest operator in the game is still Mute. Mute's story, if you didn't know, he was so smart he got accepted into Cambridge when he was about like 17 or 16, so he's a pretty massive nerd, but oh my god, does he have an amazing kit. But now that's the end of the video, I hope you can say that you can go to Rainbow Six Siege Cambridge now, because I've told you so many odd and useless facts today that genuinely will never help you inside the game, but at least now you know them. If you did enjoy, please like, subscribe, go follow my Twitch, Twitter and TikTok on Switch for this video. I love you, and goodbye. Mwah.